Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, hi, my name is Stella. I make light-hearted content all about my life with chronic illness and disability, and I also share whatever takes my fancy. And today I'm going to talk to you about mind-blowing things that you learn about EDS along the way, because the doctors don't know, nobody tells you, you just find out. So without further ado, let's get into the video. If you don't know what EDS is, it's Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, EDS for short, but I'm sure you do if you're here, since most of my audience is here for this kind of content. I was thinking about titling this video something like embarrassing things about EDS, but then I thought about it and I was like, you know what, there's nothing embarrassing about EDS or disability, and it's just that our bodies and our minds function a little bit differently to other people. I got diagnosed with EDS in 2019. That was through my Lyme literate doctor. So I found out I had Lyme disease in 2018, and because my Lyme literate doctor has EDS, she saw all the symptoms that she has in me, and she got me tested and diagnosed. It was done privately initially, and then because my issues continued to escalate, it eventually was diagnosed on the NHS through a rheumatologist, and then a whole other array of issues came about. But the first thing I wanted to talk to you about, dyspraxia. I knew about this for a long time, but it wasn't until my physio, I've done quite a few videos with Rachel now. If you want to check out my physio journey, I will link some videos. People with EDS naturally have dyspraxia because the neurons in our brain, is that what we have? The connectors in our brain, the electrons in our brain, the signals, oh yes, our brain doesn't send signals to our nerves the way the average person sends signals to their nerves. So for example, something simple like moving your arm, picking up this perfume bottle. By the way, this is incredible. It's called Juliet Has a Gun. It's not a perfume because it's not a perfume. It's got one note in it. It's made for people who suffer with headaches and migraines and allergies. It's the only perfume I've been able to use in literal years. So the average person, their brain tells them, oh, this is how you stand. You know, one foot goes in front of the other, and you know, I need to move my arm like this to pick up my crutches. But with an EDS brain, our nerves are confused with what our brain wants us to do. So for example, my physio, because I went to see her for sciatica, she got me to lay across the table, the clinic table, whatever you call it, and she was like, you know, lay down, relax, and she got me to bend this leg, and then she got me to do something like this. She stood in front of me, she was like, press against my hand, so I went like that. She was like, with your leg, and I was like, oh, and then she was like, okay, now lift your leg and do something like this. And I started doing this, and I started doing really weird things, and she was like, no. Dyspraxia in itself is a disability, so why EDS isn't always seen as a disability is beyond me, because that's just one. Do I have a horn? I have this thing where my pelvis constantly moves out of place, so my hips are constantly dislocating. And because of that, my knees then go out of alignment, and then my knees are constantly... I'm trying to click my knee back in place.
One eternity later.
That's it. I'm not squeezing my pelvic floor muscles enough and tightening my butt cheeks. And I was like, does everybody do that? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, so how comes people just like squeeze their butt cheeks and know how to control their pelvic floor muscles, but I have to think about it because that's really difficult? She was like, well, the average person, their brain sends signals to their body to just do these things naturally, whereas people with EDS, the brain doesn't do that. So the way your body moves has to be really thought about. And now the idea of having to clench my butt and my pelvic floor muscles and having to make sure my abdominals are tight and having my back straight and trying to remember that when I stand, I lift one leg so that I don't slide across. All these kinds of things literally gives me a headache. Apparently, people who don't have EDS don't need to think about stuff like that. Like, my mind is officially blown. You also have lack of spatial awareness. So here's the thing, right? I know that there's a distance between where I'm sitting and this stool in front of me. It's really light. I know that I can maybe take like one step before I hit it, but yet somehow when I go to stand up, I will more than likely bump into it. Like, I'm thinking, right, my crutches are in front of me. So if I pick up my crutches, I'm thinking about picking up my crutches. So therefore I forget that this chair is in front of me. And when I turn to walk, I then kick it. Now that's just an example. Last week, I got up to go to the toilet. I tripped up over my own legs because, I don't know, I forgot I had legs or something. And I tripped up over my own feet. I fell and I managed to sort of land on the step. Like, I don't know if you've seen my hallway, but we've got like a staircase. I managed to fall onto the staircase, so I sat down for a minute because I was really dizzy because I have POTS. When I went to get up, like, I know that the staircase has like this amount of width, yet somehow when I went to get up, I got up and my hip hit the banister and I was right back down again. That really hurt my hip. And then I got back up and then I tripped. Thankfully, it was only one step, so it was fine. And Chris was standing in front of me at that point, so he was able to catch me. But I'm like, how can I do all that and have such lack of spatial awareness in such a short period of time, even though I know my house inside out, I know everything about it, yet somehow, even though I'm looking at it, I can't gauge how far away something is. I think it goes back to the fact that our brains are not sending signals correctly. So if I'm thinking, ouch, that hurt where I tripped up on my legs, that's what my brain is thinking. Therefore, it's hard for me to connect the fact that when I stand up, there's a banister there. EDS is exhausting. There are strong links connected to autism, OCD and ADHD when it comes to EDS. Now that doesn't surprise me, because if we look at things like dyspraxia and lack of spatial awareness, those are all symptoms of autism, OCD and ADHD. Yet our brains naturally do that because of our faulty collagen and lack of connect to our body. So therefore it makes complete sense to me that a lot of us would have things such as autism, OCD or ADHD. Now you guys know that Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is hereditary. My brother, who doesn't have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, has been diagnosed with autism and ADHD. He got diagnosed quite young, back when he was in primary school, I think. He talks about it openly. He is living his best life. My teachers in school recognised that I could have some symptoms and wanted to get me tested. However, no shade to my parents, I've spoken about this in a previous video. They didn't think I had it because I was really clever, and my brother was just not academically inclined. He'd be the first one to tell you that himself. So my brother got tested and I didn't know this. Growing up, I didn't know this. And so I've struggled my whole life trying to figure out why I'm different, because I have EDS, right? But my brother got help for things like he got extra time on tests. He had a computer software that helped him to do his work. Did he have an SEN person with him? I'm not sure. You know what? I'm going to do a video of him talking all about his autism and ADHD. So if you have any questions about autism and ADHD, leave them in the comments, because I'm going to see him soon and I will get him to answer them for you. My parents were worried about us having labels. I think labels are a thing that shouldn't be a concern anymore, because all it does is helps us to understand ourselves. Anyway, there is strong scientific evidence that these conditions are linked to EDS. We all know that with EDS we have loose joints and loose muscles and loose organs and faulty collagen, joint dislocations and hypermobility. Nobody tells you that if you sneeze, your jaw can dislocate, your ribs can dislocate. The amount of times I've sneezed and a rib's popped out, like we had a barbecue a couple of weeks ago. I sneezed because it's hay fever season. My rib popped out and I was like this for a couple of hours. I couldn't eat, I could barely talk, hurts to breathe. I tell you what, I can deal with a knee dislocation, an elbow dislocation, shoulder dislocation any day, but get my rib to dislocate and oh, that agony. You have to take small bites when you eat. And so Chris chops up all my food into little squares like I'm a little diddy baby bird, because if I take a big bite because I don't have spatial awareness and I'm dyspraxic, I don't realise I'm not supposed to open my jaw too wide and therefore my jaw dislocates. So he cuts my pieces into little diddy squares and he gives me mashed carrots so that when I do go to eat, I don't naturally try and do a big bite. And then if I do take a big bite of something, because I've taken a big bite, it's like gone down and I can't swallow it and it just gets stuck. Hi Peppy. Ooh, she does not like being picked up, my Luna girl. Oh, she is such a good cuddler. Hi. 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 Oh, Luna, I love you. Mama loves you. How come you're not struggling? There you go. She loves a pat. I also don't have anything that has pulps in it because more than likely that will get stuck. Oh my god, have you tried those aloe vera drinks with the big bits in it? Full on coughing attack. Oh, I'm literally sweating. I wasn't even going to talk about this, but temperature regulation is something we cannot do. And the main reason is because like 97% of people who have EDS also have POTS. If you don't have POTS, you probably just haven't found out yet. And if you are like one of the 3% who has been tested and don't have POTS, you probably have hypermobile spectrum syndrome and not EDS. Whereas from my understanding of hypermobile spectrum syndrome, it is not hereditary, and most of the time the hypermobility comes from wear and tear, such as people who are gymnasts from a young age and who have had an injury that has caused them to be hypermobile in a certain area. But that condition still comes with fatigue and joints popping out and stuff like that, so it is just different. However, doctors rarely know the difference, so most of the time they will diagnose you with hypermobile spectrum disorder without actually getting you tested for Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So just be aware of that, that most of the time people who are diagnosed with hypermobile spectrum disorder actually have EDS, but don't know it, or their doctors don't know enough about EDS. Having EDS leads to a bunch of allergies. Like growing up, I remember my mum saying to me I was allergic to milk, I was allergic to oats, I was allergic to fish, I still am by the way, and in Bulgaria, which is where I'm from and where I grew up, dietary things weren't a thing back then. I mean, maybe here they weren't either, And so my parents were like struggling with finding me foods. The list of allergies just slowly increased to the point where I was like allergic to everything. And then I found out it's because I have EDS and a comorbidity of EDSs. Mast cell activation syndrome. It's a bit like POTS. Literally something like 97% of people with EDS have mast cell activation syndrome. And if you haven't been diagnosed, you probably just don't know you have it yet. And if you've been tested and you don't have it, it's probably because you have hypermobile spectrum disorder. A bit like the POTS. Also, the thing with mast cell activation syndrome, the testing is a bit funky because they get you to do a blood test, but if you're not flaring at the time, that blood test could actually come back negative. So what my doctor told me was to actually do my blood test on a day where I'm flaring so they would show up positive. Isn't that bizarre? That's how a lot of testing works, to be honest with you. And that's how I found out I have lupus, because the first time I did the lupus test, it came back negative. Second time I did it, I was having a flare up and it came back positive. So madness how testing works. I didn't realise that these allergies extended to dust, which a lot of people are allergic to, certain scents. If somebody around me is wearing a perfume, I could have a full-blown asthma attack. Things like certain fabrics, mold, ooh, that's a good video topic. Things like humidity levels, air quality, oh my god, cooking, cleaning, heat, temperature. And then if you find yourself allergic to everything or having some kind of reaction, then you most likely have mast cell activation syndrome. But if you look up mast cell activation syndrome on the NHS, they say it's rare, but quite frankly, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome isn't rare, it's just underdiagnosed and poorly understood. Therefore, people with EDS appear rare, and then that means they then look at mast cell activation syndrome as rare. People who have mast cell are often diagnosed with asthma. I'm taking something called low dose naltrexone to help me with that, which the NHS doesn't provide, and I have to get it from my private clinic place that I go to for Lyme disease. A lot of people with EDS, when they look back, they realise that growing up they didn't walk properly. Certain movements they do were a little bit different to other people. Like I've got super flat feet, which I've spoken about before. Super bendy feet, mind you. They're like talons, my feet. Because of how floppy they are and how flat they are, I didn't know how to step properly, so I was just going flip, 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 and then losing my balance and like falling. Not even because something dislocated, but because my feet are so flexible that I wasn't aware of how I should be walking and stepping correctly. I have to do certain things like when you turn, like, you know, most people just go, like I have to go, and that will avoid dislocating a shoulder. When I stand up and I turn, I have to turn my whole body, and it is a whole process. I think I've talked enough. I'm sure I missed a whole bunch of things. Let me know in the comments if you can relate. Thanks so much for watching and for being here, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.